Thank you for joining us for the 2021 Hemp Market Outlook webinar. A big thank you to all our speakers. We're able to offer this free webinar. We'll start the day with Denise Woods, the Hemp Program Coordinator with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. Then we have Dr. Eric Walker and our keynote speaker, Seth Boone, to share their knowledge in production in the hemp market. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. You probably noticed I have disabled all your mute and video capacity to make sure the quality of the recording. Hope you could understand. And if you have any questions during the session, feel free to type them into the chat box. We have 15 minutes in between each session to tackle those questions for you. If you like to locate a chat box right now, please type your name and location into the box and to help us to see who's joining us and from where. I am recording the session and plan to post it online in the event you would like to view it again or share with someone else. And I will ask two questions at the end of session to help me record feedbacks. If there are no questions at this time, let's learn about what exciting updates coming from Denise. Denise, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Iris. Well, first, I would just like to say good morning to everyone out there, all the hemp growers and those that are interested in growing hemp. This morning has been exciting and wonderful. It's such a fantastic segue into talking about hemp with what's happened in the last 30 minutes. Stayed late last night working on the presentation in the room and come to work this morning and found out about 15 minutes ago that there is a campus-wide fire drill. So scrambling to go to Plan B to Plan C, and I know as hemp growers, you all know just how that feels. But I want to commend Iris. It's just 9:06 and we're into the program and everything is good. So like I said, I commend Iris and she's working with me to present the audio and the visuals. So I want to thank you all for your patience and real excited to share with you this morning. The first thing I would like to do is introduce the Tennessee Hemp team. And our team is led by Annie Self. She is the plant certification administrator. There are Mike Studer is the state apiarist. Steve Powell is the entomologist. And most of you know Katie Kilborn. She is our state plant pathologist. So that's one line of our team that's always available to our hemp growers if they have questions about pollination, about bugs. There's a lot of talk about cicadas right now. Steve's been doing a lot of research on that. And like I said, most of you know Katie and her love for plant pathology. Our administrative services assistants are Julia Craig, Emily Dillahay, and Bonnie Cannell. And I'm sure most of you have spoken with these folks on the phone. We're all here to help, and we want you to feel free at any time to call with your questions. And of course, we are appreciative of your patience when you realize the amount of phone calls that we receive, especially at this time of year, since it is renewal time. And then, of course, our state inspectors are positioned throughout the state and readily available to you. If you take a few minutes and become familiar with our website, it has a lot of valuable information, a lot of frequently asked questions, some history, ways to get in contact with your state inspectors can be found there on our website. But the Tennessee Hemp team is at work every day. Even through the pandemic, we have been covered daily in our phones. Business is as usual. Well, as usual as hemp goes, just like this morning, doing our webinar in spite of a campus-wide fire drill. So that is just the business of hemp, is to be ready to pivot on a dime and be used to changing circumstances, because that is the one constant with hemp, is change. So Iris, if you would like to go to the next slide after presenting our team, what I'd like to share with you first is 5 years of hemp in Tennessee. And we're looking specifically at 2015 through 2020. Beautiful picture, hemp field in East Tennessee. The next slide, the introduction, gives our vision and our mission. And I hope that each one of you as hemp growers have your own vision and your own mission, your own purpose, why you want to grow hemp. Because I dare say there's probably not anyone that you would speak to that when you said you were going to grow hemp would realize that it's a hard job. And to have your vision clear, your mission clear, really keeps you on track as to why you want to grow this commodity crop. But the governor hopes for Tennessee to become a national leader in agriculture and forestry through economic advancement, innovation, natural resource stewardship, by commitment to service, family, farms, and healthy living. And I think as you look at that vision through the lens of hemp, you see how that is working and how we are being successful amid some probably difficult times. It's part of developing a supply chain and a new industry. So even though it has been difficult and it may continue to be difficult, it's coming. It's coming, and it's just the growing pains of a new industry. The mission to serve all citizens of Tennessee by providing options for responsible use of our agricultural and forest resources, develop economic opportunities, safeguarding food and fiber, and ensuring quality in the marketplace. And here's where I think the department really shines, because there's very real hands-on evidence of how this is happening. In the area of developing economic opportunities, Kyle Hensley has been brought aboard as a business development consultant for hemp. And he has open door. He's always ready to talk to any of our growers about business development, economic opportunities. Safeguarding food and fiber, we have a fantastic food safety, food and dairy section in the Department of Agriculture. The manufactured food coordinator is Patricia Hart, and she has worked very, very hard making this more accessible and the information readily available as hemp growers look at processing and developing food products that might have hemp in them. So Kyle Hensley, Business Development Consultant, Patricia Hart, Manufacturer Food Coordinator, ensuring equity in the marketplace. There's been an extra effort in the department toward making hemp part of the Pick Tennessee products. So if you go on our website and look for Pick Tennessee, you will find hemp listed as one of the crops that can be listed as a Pick Tennessee product. And that is Deborah Ball's area of expertise. So we can see very real evidence of how the state is working to making hemp a viable option for our growers, even through difficult times and some very difficult growing pains. The next slide, Iris, is some words that come to mind when we think of hemp. It goes from one end to the other. Challenging, certainly dynamic, lots of possibilities, entrepreneurship, rewarding, risky. There's a lot of skepticism sometimes when you say you're growing hemp. There's research and development being done. It has a wonderful opportunity as far as sustainability and regenerative agriculture. There's just so many possibilities with hemp. And it's just a matter of, like I said, knowing your vision, your mission, gathering information. And that's why these kind of webinars hosted by Iris and her group are so valuable. You have great contact, great networking, and whatever the most recent research is made available. UT in Knoxville, TSU, both have hemp licenses and are doing research. So we're expecting great things out of those institutions of learning. So hemp diversity is another wonderful, strong point when we think of hemp. There are people that are interested in growing hemp that haven't been interested in any other crop. So the folks that come to the table to talk about hemp, that come into the agricultural arena, are folks that up till now may not have been that interested. So having that option is a wonderful opportunity to bring diversity to the table, to change the conversation, to enlarge the conversation, just keeping in mind a new industry, new ideas, wonderful opportunities for entrepreneurship. Where the supply chain has been sparse, people's ingenuity and creativity have created their own marketplace. So lots of applaud for hard work and vision. Iris, I'm going on to the history of Tennessee hemp. And most of us are familiar with that. If you're in this webinar, you've been interested enough to sign on. I'm just going to let you read through that. I think all of us realize that hemp has been in history for thousands of years. So it can be both new and old depending on the context of the conversation. So hemp's been part of the Tennessee narrative for years. Not so much. The next slide shows that for decades, hemp in Tennessee has been a blank slate. You know, it went through early pioneer days as being a prominent crop, and through World War II, and then just fading away. And so since mid of last century, hemp in Tennessee has been a blank slate. The next slide shows where Congress passed the Agricultural Act of 2014, or the 2014 Farm Bill, which opened the door for states to establish their pilot program. And we're proud to say that Tennessee was quick to come on board. We were second only to Kentucky to develop a program. So Annie took the program from the beginning, and it was not part of USDA when it first started. It was a state-initiated pilot program. So we have been in the game since the beginning. The Farm Bill was 2014, and we began our program in 2015. By Public Chapter 916 became effective on July 1, 2014, creating Tennessee's Industrial Hemp Research Pilot Program. And we still have several folks in the program that started with the program, and we sure appreciate them and know that they have seen a lot of change. As new ones come along and the program develops and becomes more established, we thank those folks for taking those first steps with us. So Iris, I am now on the slide that says hemp at the top. We know that hemp's emergence onto Tennessee's agricultural stage was a relatively quiet one, although there was lots of interest and lots of buzz about the program. But in that year, we had 49 licensed growers in 2015. And then hemp was slow and steady to grow, which is the way the program was designed. And then you'll see from the graph where it began to take a peak, and that can be attributed to a lot of top media coverage, getting ready for the crescendo of 2018 with the Farm Bill. The slide that is entitled Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and let you read through that, let that soak in, how the 2014 Farm Bill translated and phased into the 2018 program. The big change was going from industrial pilot program. The word industrial was taken out, and it was no longer considered a research project, which, as you may remember, was very cumbersome application process, and more paperwork had to be done and submitted to us. So as you read through that, you'll see that section 12619 was very important by removing hemp plants and hemp products, including CBD, from the Controlled Substance Act. And as further changes took place, farmers now have access to crop insurance, and USDA AMS is in charge of the program. And we'll talk more about that in the final rules as we travel on through the PowerPoint. Iris, I'm on the screen hemp that shows the sharp increase in the program in 2019. With the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill, hemp crescendoed into a whopping 3,957 growers with over 51,000 licensed acres, making Tennessee Hemp Program the largest in the country. And as we talk to folks across the country, it is amazing and a testimony to our growers to see just how strong our farmers are and their interest in the crop, for whatever their purpose is. Tennessee remains having a very strong hemp program. I think everybody realized that spike in 2019 was an anomaly. You'll see on the next couple slides how the program has steadied out. Currently, we have 2010 licensees. Still a very strong, probably more realistic program. The next slide is the hemp legislative progression. And as I said at the beginning of the webinar, the one thing about hemp is you've got to be ready to change. You have to be able to pivot on a dime. And I realize when decisions are made and investments are made that can be a hard thing to do. So another hats off, raise the roof to our growers, how they have been able to navigate through this emergent industry. But once again, I'm going to slow down talking and let you just get just the visual of how this program has changed legislatively through the years. As you read down through there, we go from state rules and regulations through federal. One set of rules ends, picks up, changes, and each time the state has been able to try and minimize the impact, yet follow the rules and not add more burdensome layers of rules and regulations. It's not our job for red tape and hoop jumping. The state has worked very hard to keep it as simple as possible. So that has been the legislative progression thus far. And I'm sure by the time we get to the end of the PowerPoint, there will be questions about the final rule and how the state maintained the 2014 Farm Bill instead of going to those final rules this past March. So yeah, sure, we'll be glad to entertain those questions when we get there. The next screen is the regulatory timeline. It's pretty much the same information that was on the last slide, just more visual and less words, just showing how from 2014 with the signing of the Farm Bill how it's progressed to March 22nd with the implementation of the final rule, and how that will play out through the year. And Tennessee will implement the final rule as of today. Tennessee will implement the final rule January of 2022. The next visual is Hemp 2020, and that is just a chart that gives all of our information for 2020. It shows the total growers. It divides it into the regions of the state, east, middle, and west. It also breaks it down, as you know from our application, that there are 3 tiers: less than 5 acres, 5 acres to 20 acres, and then over 20 acres. So if you want to take just a quick minute and digest some of those numbers, the difference between the top, where it says industrial hemp licensed growers, and industrial hemp actual grow, you'll see the difference between the number of licensed acres and the number of acres that were actually grown. And I do caution, anytime we look at numbers like this, to remember to see the big picture and realize what those numbers really represent. Because of hemp's connection with its law enforcement implications, a lot of folks will license more acres than they intend to grow. But that's an effort to just always make sure they're compliant and that rooted material stays within a licensed area. So keeping that in mind, when you see that big difference between licensed acres and actual grow acres, that's very explainable and very understandable. So after taking a look at those charts, looking at those numbers, we're going to go on to Hemp Tennessee Hemp Growers. And this shows the trajectory of the program from 2015 to December of 2020. And that's a point, too, that I'd like to point out, is the state's licenses are valid from July 1st of one year through June 30th of the next year. And that is the state's fiscal year. And I realize that is in the middle of a lot of grow seasons. But since so many of our growers are indoor growers, there's really never a time that there's not hemp growing in Tennessee. So as you get your license and you proceed into the program, just always keep that in mind, that it's from July 1 to June 30th. We don't prorate or refund, or it's July 1 through June 30th. So you can see how the program has grown through the years. 2015 with 49 growers, 2016, 64 growers, and then building in 2018 with 226 growers, crescendoed in 2019 with almost 4,000 growers, and then becoming a more steady program in 2020 with 1,918 growers. The next screen is Hemp Acres in 2020, and this goes back to what I was saying about the difference between licensed acres and actually grown acres. Realizing that the difference, I think, is out of the abundance of caution. And it's both easier and safer to license more acres than not enough acres, because we all know things happen. You come in with plants and the weather, the time, whatever, you end up having plants, and you need to only have rooted material in licensed areas. So it's safer to license and mark the barn, the outbuilding, the shed, anywhere that you think a rooted a plant may be, than to need to park rooted material maybe for the night and it not be a licensed area. So although this looks like whopping difference. There's very understandable reasons between the difference of licensed areas and actually grown. Hemp 2020 grow areas is the next slide. I think it's just the pictures speak 1,000 words. On the left is what we think of when we traditionally think of farming in Tennessee, just open field, rows and rows of beautiful crop. But hemp has showed us that some of our ideals of what farming looks like have changed. And so on the right, we have that indoor grow closet, all self-contained, equally a growing area. So when you say hemp farmer, whatever comes to your mind, there's a lot of diversity in hemp farming. So I think this picture really shows that, the difference in what we think of traditional farming and what you may find as far as what a hemp farmer looks like and how he operates. Shows that 96% of the areas were outdoor areas, with only 4% being greenhouse, indoor grow areas. The next slide is hemp growing areas January 2020 through December 2020. So that was calendar year last year. Shows what the state looked like as far as our growing areas, where the concentration is, whether they're indoor or outdoor grow areas. Once again, a great visual to see where the hemp growing concentration is in Middle Tennessee. Northern Middle Tennessee is, but widely represented throughout the state, as seen by those. The next slide, hemp growing areas 2015 through December of 2020, just gives a great visual of how the state has changed in the past few years. 2015 lists each growing area and its size. You see that it's sparse, but still widely represented across the state. Interest from west to east. And then you see in December of 2020, the concentration. I believe right now there's only one county in Tennessee that does not have a hemp grower. So 94 of our 95 counties are represented in the hemp program. Iris, the next screen is Tech Service Lab, hemp sampling. This too is another just verification of how the state backs the hemp growers. From 2015 to 2018, you see that huge jump in lab sampling, with only 56 samples being taken in 2015 to 950 samples taken in 2019. So as you can imagine, the manpower, the equipment, just the job that our lab did to handle that 2019 surge is just, it's amazing. When I look at those numbers, I'm forever sobered and just amazed at our farmers, at Katie and Annie for handling the program, and for our lab to go from 56 samples to 950 lab tests. What that represented. And then in 2020, we did the 10% random sampling with 209. You'll see that only 4 crops were destroyed and 1 was turned to TBI. The next slide is hemp sampling. Once again, it's a map. This dashboard can be found on our website. Anytime you want to take a look at this, you can find it there. But hemp sampling, this slide will show you the varieties in the upper right corner that tested above the 0.3 delta 9 THC. And it also will give you the key on the left, and you'll see how the samples were taken throughout the state. At the bottom, you'll see the varieties. If you want to take a quick look at that, you'll see which varieties were mostly represented in the sampling and what's common in Tennessee. Also on our website, one of our inspectors, Tim Robertson, worked on the variety trial that can be found on the website, and that will give you a good reading on the varieties that have been grown in Tennessee. So when you're looking for seed or clones, to know the varieties that have done well in a Tennessee climate, you may want to take a look at that. Once again, the website has lots of information. As I was saying on the next slide, seed acquisition, with the 2014 Farm Bill, the department handled the acquisition of seed, and the growers had to come to our department to obtain their seed. Those first couple of years, seed came from Canada, Italy, France, and there were several challenges with that all the way through 2018. But after 2018, growers were allowed to get their own seed, to acquire their own seed, their own clones. So once again, on the website, there is a list of Tennessee licensed seed sellers, and also HAT, Hemp Alliance of Tennessee, is also a great resource for you to reach out and network. They have a very good handle on what's happening in Tennessee, and you would be able to get a lot of good information from the Hemp Alliance of Tennessee, HAT, if you'd like to Google that. So the next slide is movement permits. It'll just show you how from 2015 to 2018, the growers actually had to contact our department for a movement permit. 2019, in June, it went to an automated system that's quick and easy if you have the information right there ready to input it. And there were over 1,500 issued permits in 2020. Once again, I'd like to reiterate that the two reasons you need a movement permit is anytime you're transporting rooted material, and if you're moving hemp from the field to the processor. So if you call in, our questions are, does it have roots? If you tell us, no, it doesn't have roots, then you don't need a movement permit. A lot of times we'll issue that just because it's a peace of mind. It's another form of documentation that reassures everyone that what you have in your possession is truly hemp. So does it have roots? Yes or no? If you say yes, then you need a movement permit, and we'll proceed for that to come to you. If you say no, then it's your choice as to whether you want one or not. The only other time you'll need a movement permit, like I said, is if you're cutting hemp in the field, moving it to a processor right then. If you're cutting it in the field and moving it to a barn, you don't have to have a movement permit. If you're cutting hemp in the field today and you're moving it to a warehouse to store or somewhere to dry, you don't need a movement permit. But we're always glad to issue the paperwork that makes everybody most comfortable. And we recommend that you always have your license, COAs, lab results, movement permits, everything in order and just ready to hand it to anyone who may need to see that. As we move along, just quickly touching on hemp pathology and entomology. The screen Hemp Pathology gives you just a broad overview of some of the diseases, viruses, fungus that was seen through the years. So if you'd like to read through those real quick, those are some of the most common. Like I said, those first couple years, the only report was the agronomic reports that our growers submitted that was part of the Farm Bill research projects. The next slide is hemp entomology. And I mean, everybody knows about the bugs. If you've grown, if you've harvested much of anything, you know bugs is a constant challenge. So those lists there are what we most commonly saw through the years as far as bug problems. The next slide, hemp community outreach. The department has been very active with UT and counties to bring information regarding hemp and the hemp program. There's been tremendous interest throughout across communities, from experienced tobacco farmers to folks who, I mean, you've probably heard me say it before, hasn't planted a seed since they put it in a Dixie cup for their mamas on Mother's Day. So that's one of the best things about the program, is bringing folks to the agricultural table to bring new ideals, new ways, for the most part, a new plan in discovering it in all of its possibilities. And then, as you well know, programs were developed like the one Iris is doing with us today and presented across the state in conjunction with the University of Tennessee to meet the needs and answer the questions of growers. And there's been well over 4,500 participants. So it's always a great thing when people are interested enough to get out and go to work, because that's what growing hemp, it's a lot of work. The next slide is plant certification employees, and it just shows the department's commitment to making hemp a viable program, a viable option for the state. They've brought on administrative services assistants and coordinators, hired more inspectors across the state, so it's easier to get a hold of people, easier to get information. And then finally, we get to 2021, the Hemp Program. It's been one of our main goals was to increase and maintain good communication between the department and the growers. Each month, a newsletter, an email is sent out, and that's something I guess I have to say. We realize that you are inundated with all kinds of emails, but we try to set ours apart and make sure you realize that it is an important hemp email coming from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. So really look for those. They usually come out mid-month. And as we said, beginning in January, we're operating as we did last year. And what that means is there'll be at least, you can count on one inspection and one sampling from one variety. Now you can have as many samples, as you would like, but as far as what has to be done, it's one inspection and sample for one variety this year. We continue to only report Delta 9 THC. There's a 30-day sampling window, so if you see your plant beginning to mature within that 30 days, going from clear to amber, you need to get in contact with your inspector and make arrangements to have a sample taken within that 30-day window. The state this year has contracted with a third party to conduct its sampling. That is AgWin, and we have given you the website. So when you see your plant maturing, like I said, you can contact your inspector, go to the website, contact AgWin, and schedule your sample. And the labs that are used are DEA approved. Now, as we look toward 2022, there will be a change. The state chose to stay with the 2014 Farm Bill parameters this year, which allowed us to continue with the Delta 9, gave us more option on the sampling. But come 2022, January 2022, we will be going to the USDA final rule. And that website is right there. You may want to become familiar with that. Some of the main differences will be we'll go from testing for Delta 9 to testing for total THC. Every variety will be sampled, or there will be a performance-based sampling system. And that is what we're aiming for, is the performance-based. So we're working on that currently. We have high hopes for that. And then there's, of course, more working with the Farm Service Agency as far as reporting crop acreage and working with them. So that's a change. But most farmers come in contact with that last year and hopefully have that taken care of. Iris, I'm finished. Are there questions?
All right, Denise, even though we had a rough start, but the presentation is really great. I really enjoyed the presentation.
Well, thank you.
Let me check if there are any questions. Okay, so I have one question from Dr. Hansen. Can you describe performance-based sampling?
Sure. And once again, if to add to what I say, that website that was on the screen, or still may be there, I'm not sure what's up right now, but that discusses performance-based sampling. It's a provision that the USDA offered us to allow some flexibility in how we do our sampling. In the process right now, we're gathering information from the variety trials from 2019, as you know, and I've requested the variety trials from 2020 and appreciate the work that's being done there. So we'll take that information, we'll take the information from our lab, from other labs that prove, that substantiate that certain varieties have historically maintained a level, looking at both Delta 9 and total THC, that have maintained a level of compliance that we could use in sampling or not sampling in the year to come. So we take the history of growers, we take the history of certain varieties, their performance, their testing, their results, and develop a plan that will be used in how we decide who will be sampled and how sampling will be done next year. Does that answer the question? Performance-based is using historical evidence as far as our growers' experience and the science of testing the plant, which varieties have consistently tested below the compliance level. So it's an information gathering endeavor right now.
Thank you, Denise. I think that probably will take a long time to establish that base as well. We have another 3 questions. The first one is, do you have a contact for Kyle Hensley?
Oh, let's see if I do. Okay, he is located at UT in Knoxville. Like I said, business development consultant, UT Knoxville.
Denise, we actually have Kyle just jumped on into the chat and left his contact information.
Oh, thank you, Kyle.
That's great. Thank you, Kyle. And we have another question. Aaron
See,
asked,
that's the team right there.
yeah,
You saw
definitely.
that's great.
That's great. Yeah, we have another question from Erin. She asked, when you said next year that total THC will be measured, do you mean both Delta 8 and Delta 9 basically counting as the same thing?
No, no. No, just total THC. Total THC is the THC acid and the Delta 9 added. So no, THC, total THC. And once again, I highly recommend that every grower that's interested in even just interested, before you even start, read that final rule. There's also a webinar on that website that's fantastic. I mean, if you can sit through it, you'll learn a lot.
There another question add on to that. So does that mean Delta 9 plus THCA?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Gotcha.
total.
Gotcha. Let's see. We have a lot more questions coming. Diana asked, will the flower grown being tested just for Delta 9 this year still legal to sell when the federal rule goes into place January next year?
So if a harvest, say you harvest in November, Diana, and you have all your paperwork, all your lab reports in Tennessee to sell it, say January, February, March of next year, if it was grown and legal and you have the paperwork to substantiate that, then in Tennessee, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question about fiber. Are there any fiber processing options in Tennessee? Any decorticator facility
Yeah.
or only oil?
Yeah, that's the word, decorticator. Okay, fiber is the up and coming. Fiber is exciting. There's so much talk about fiber right now. As far as a big state known decorticator in the state, I don't know of that. I do know of some smaller ones throughout the state that individuals use. So keep your ears open for fiber. I have high hopes that we'll be hearing a lot about that. And as far as a decorticator that I can just send you to, no, I don't know of a large one. And Kyle may want to jump in here too. I do know there's several small ones, but if Kyle has something he'd like to add, about that, I'd love to hear.
Okay. And Kyle, if you do know, please just leave in the chat. I'm sorry, I have unmuted everybody, so you won't be able to talk.
Love that power.
But we have other questions. Okay, Denise, when will we see rules for retail? We're tired of every CBD store selling products like Delta 8 that is not regulated or tested, and we get regulations and they don't.
Yeah, life's not fair, huh? Yes, the state is very aware of Delta 8 and what's happening in that area. And we are regulatory, but we are given the rules. So when the legislature, when all of that happens, then we'll be there to enforce it and talk about it. But as everyone knows right now, Delta 8 is just unregulated in the state.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm seeing one more question. is there data on the market value of hemp in Tennessee?
There's a couple publications that talk about that. As far as I mean, I know you can dial in, and if you're selling feeder calves or you're taking your grain to the market, you know, you can call in and get today's price, but it's just not like that with hemp yet. But if they want to email me, I will sure share whatever I have as far as the market. And I know Iris, you know, you will too. There's several publications. So if they want to email me, I'll be glad to share everything I know.
Thank you, Denise. And Julian, I will share the presentation to everybody, and it has Denise information on there. So if you want to just email her to share what the state has to offer in terms of the reporting. But I don't think it's like mandatory to report your sales data. And we will have Seth,
Correct.
agriculture economist from Colorado later, our keynote speaker, to talk about the market outlook. And I'm sure he will bring up the prices trend in nationwide and possibly in Tennessee specifically. All right, we have more chat coming in. Denise, just hold on with us.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
You know, may I say, you know, there was a lot of folks weren't used to working. Now, our traditional row crop farmers are very familiar with the Farm Service Agency, but a lot of our hemp growers were not. And that information, once again, can just be found on the internet if you Google closest FSA office, and it'll come up with a map, and you click on your county and it will tell you where the office is. But I understand the reluctance, but I also know for this, the kind of information that people are wanting, and I know Iris, you would appreciate that. We have to collect information. And right now, you know, the state doesn't require an agronomic report. The state doesn't require a lot of extra information be sent to us, but as part of FSA's program and part of crop insurance and as part of funding and grants, they have to have that kind of information. So it's important. To report that kind of information. People want to make decisions on credible, good information. Well, if we don't have that, then that makes it difficult. So it's all part of the program, all part of the process of it becoming hemp, becoming a program just like every other commodity crop. It's part of growing up.
Definitely. I totally agree. And data, you know, from research standpoint that you're collecting something, but people can interpret it into something else. And it's just not uniform sometimes what we collected too, and make us hard to process those data.
Exactly. Very good. Yes.
And we have one more, just time for one more question. Let's see. So Michael asked, is there any data on what products getting made in Tennessee, the relative value of those market?
Well, once again, Michael, as far as actual official reporting, you know, I'm not familiar with it. I don't have it in my wheelhouse. You know, as I said, hemp is part of PIC Tennessee, so it's out there. As far as giving you a list of products, and I mean, I've heard of everything being made from hemp from A to Z. So, and like I said, the entrepreneurship that we see in our growers is phenomenal. So the kind of products and the price they are sold for, official data I do not have.
Gotcha.
And once again, Iris, Kyle, you know, whoever wants to add in to help answer Michael's question.
Okay. Michael said thank you for that. And I've seen one more question from Carla, but since you know Carla, I'm going to ask Carla to call you personally because we're a little bit short on time and I like to make it on time. Thank you,
Well,
Denise.
Sure. Thank you, Iris. Thank you, everyone, for caring enough and being interested to join us today. And always know the phone is there, email. You need something, you let us know.